Is there anything we have to do? Should we shut it off? When I'm not talking, should I shut it off?
Okay. Okay.
Okay, thank you for coming. I'm Marian Shane and the originator of Community Currents.
Let's see. Dana's gonna
Test. That's a little. Can you lower it 3? Go ahead and try that.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, and I'll talk loudly. I'm Marian Shane and I'm the originator of Community Currents. Our future programs will be Joe Samidian, who is our Santa Clara County supervisor. It might seem as though we are very distant from the county, but they're in charge of much of our daily life. Terrace is in touch with them about how to respond to health issues, as well as many, many other things. They're in charge of our criminal, prison, and justice system, and much more. That will be Tuesday, August 25th at 3:30. On October 25th, we will have Fran Rushing, who is an art historian. But today, we have a very special program on mental health. Cindy McCalmont, our spiritual care director, has assembled a special panel to inform us about this important issue. So at this point, I'm going to turn the program over to Cindy.
Yay. Thank you, Marian, for coming up with the community currents. I think it's so important that we are aware of what's happening around us in our community. Today, we have the dream team here. You are getting the best of the best of the best who know what's happening around mental health in Santa Clara County. Oh, thank you. So let me first of all introduce at the piano is my friend John Duckworth. John is a longtime worker in the area of homelessness and mental health and addiction recovery. So we're going to be hearing from him. Sharon Roth, you all know, but maybe you don't know how important she has been in a number of mental health programs, chief among them the community, the officers training, the CIT training, the crisis intervention. And she's going to talk a little bit about that and some other community programs that really are working to get people the help that they need. Next to her is Kathy Cordova, who's the executive director at Recovery Cafe. Recovery Cafe is a model that started in Seattle. The second Recovery Cafe was here in San Jose. And now there are more than 30 across the country. And she's going to tell you exactly what this model is and why it works for mental health recovery. And then next to her is Kathy Ford, who is the former executive director of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Kathy has spoken everywhere, all over, continues to speak, very, very passionate about getting people the mental health resources that they need to live in wellness and recovery. To kick us off, though, John, sing us a song.
Hi. So I spent upwards to 14 years
Yeah, get that closer.
being yes.
A little bit.
Test, test, test.
Okay.
Ooh, delicate things these are. So the long and short of it is that I spent a lot of time in Salvation Armies and the going blank. Anyway, places to that are run by Christian organizations to sleep. And so we listened to a lot of gospel music, and it helped to be someone who could play church music to get to stay overnight to the missions and Salvation Armies. So this is a song I wrote. It's called "Jesus Help Dig Me Out This Hole." My fingers aren't licensed for a Steinway, so don't tell my union. I got my shovel and my spade, thought I'd lead a big parade down to the very depths of hell. Well, thank you, Lord, I hit a rock. You said there my path to block. Now my pit become a wishing well. Jesus, Jesus, help dig me out this hole. Jesus, help dig me out this hole. I dug this hole so deep and wide, I hope the devil's satisfied. Jesus, help dig me out this hole. Well, I couldn't get enough of sin, dug a hole and jumped right in. Kept on digging, even though I knew one sweet day you'd pull me out. Praise your name, sing and shout. Thank you, Lord, for doing what you do. Jesus, Jesus, help dig me out this hole. Jesus, help dig me out this hole. I dug this hole all by myself. I can't blame nobody else. Jesus, help dig me out this hole. Well, I got about a mile straight down, couldn't reach the solid ground. Seems like things were really getting hot. You threw cool water on my face. Praise your name, amazing grace. Now the hole is one place that I'm not. Jesus, Jesus, help dig me out this hole. Jesus, help dig me out this hole. I dug this hole so deep and wide, I hope the devil's satisfied. Jesus, help dig me out this hole. Jesus, help dig me out this hole.
Thank you, John. Kathy, forward.
Okay. All right, so Cindy gave me a list here, and I'm Kathy Forward, and I always tell people, first and foremost, I'm a family member. I have a sister who has a serious mental health diagnosis since she was in her mid-20s, and my son also developed a serious substance use and mental health condition when he was starting around 17. And even though it was in my family and I'd seen things with my sister, I realized I didn't know anything and I didn't recognize the symptoms of my son's, what he was developing. So I found NAMI. My parents found
People are
NAMI.
having a hard time hearing you.
Oh, they are?
Yeah,
Okay,
just
which
move
I-
it over just.
Is that better? Is that better? Okay. So my parents were labeled the schizophrenic parents. That's what they did to people in the 70s when they thought families caused mental illness, autism, and a bunch of other stuff. And it wasn't until they started studying the brain in the 90s they realized a lot of these were neurological, biological, chemical imbalances, conditions. And it's very complicated. Cindy asked me to talk about the different kinds of and levels of mental illness, and I'm not a professional. I teach a class at NAMI called Family to Family Keys to Understanding. And when I took that class 2 years after my son started showing his illness, I realized how much I didn't know. I learned quite a bit. It's a, at that time, it was a 10-week course, and learning about all the different diagnoses, the signs and symptoms. I thought medications were magic pills. So, I had a lot of misjudgments and misunderstandings about my sister, and also how mental illness affects families. These are family illnesses, just like substance use disorders are. And so that's how I became involved with NAMI. And to simplify that question, I would say there are thought disorders, and psychosis falls under that. One of the diagnoses is schizophrenia, but you can have psychosis with other forms of mental illness. There are mood disorders. So you've heard of bipolar disorder, where you have the mania and depression. Depression is a mood disorder. There are anxiety disorders, and there are personality disorders. There's quite a few different things. And there's no real black and white, like this is exactly what it looks like for every person. Every person is different. Their chemistry is different. They respond differently. Medication, treatment is, there, and recovery and wellness is possible, but it is not an easy thing because aside from managing it for many people through medications and maybe some therapy, they have to deal with the symptoms. And like I said, those things don't take the illnesses away. So that's the simplest form I can give you. And the next question was, what does the role of, lots of the community members, counselors, pharmaceuticals, house of worship, government, institutions, organizations like NAMI and family play in recovery. So a lot of people don't seek treatment because of stigma and discrimination. There's still a lot of that around. We have self-stigma ourselves. In the media, we see things all the time. If there's any kind of mass murder, they immediately go to mental illness and blame, oh, this person must have a serious mental illness. But there are studies that are done, and they realize that only 20% of those crimes are committed by someone who has a diagnosis. So we're being educated through the media, and the media has a lot of misinformation. And so that's why I think, all the community needs to play a part in the recovery model, because we all need community. We need our families. A supported, educated family, the person has a much better prognosis. Is it perfect? No, because again, these are illnesses that are serious for many people. And, living with it day to day, they have to come to terms with, whether I can work full time or not, or, it depends on a lot of things. And we need a supported, educated community, faith communities, any kind of community. We need to understand these things so that we don't shun people and we can accept them. We can, we don't have to be experts in mental illness, but, to recognize some of the symptoms. How can we have compassion and empathy for people? And how can we help them find resources? How can we help them find the support that they need and encourage them to be in treatment and to follow through on, things that are recommended to them. So one of the things that NAMI, and one that I liked about NAMI is, like I said, mental illness doesn't discriminate. So right from the very beginning, the first class that I took in '97, our classes look like the United Nations. Because again, mental illness doesn't care if you're rich or poor, if you're black or white. It doesn't care what your politics are. It affects everybody. So NAMI actually takes all those things away. And how are we reacting to dealing with a mental illness as a family member or as a person with a condition? And that's done through peers. So, when you come to NAMI, we are a peer-run organization, and the classes are taught by family members like myself. We go through trainings. It's scripted. It's taught the same way all over the country. We have lots of discussions and exercises. And you see this group of people from all these different walks of life. And like I said, we don't look alike, and we have different cultures. And yet here we are having discussions, learning things. In the end, we see people really united about how they can carry on with their lives find hope again, self-care, the things that we need to carry on. You know, my sister still has her illness. My son still has his illness. And, you know, I support them and encourage them. I'm a caregiver for my sister now. I have outside help, but I also have to take care of myself. And so self-care is really critical. I still go on vacation. Sometimes I feel guilty about doing that, but I know that that helps me. You know, I can go to the beach, I can go for a walk, talk with friends. And, you know, spiritual communities are a very big part that we're taking on right now. We have a effort called FaithNet. And so we're educating faith leaders to understand what this looks like. You know, yes, we need prayers, but we wouldn't just say to somebody having a heart attack in front of us, I'll pray for you. But yet that's what happens to somebody with a mental health challenge. And they'll say, well, go get some treatment and you can come back when things are better. Well, guess what? They don't come back. They need that support. They need, you know, what you would do for somebody that has diabetes or having a heart condition to help them get the help they need, and encourage them, and continue to bring them into your community. So the importance of peers is extremely important. I believe the peers should be everywhere because they can be the bridge for people. You know, for me to talk to a family member and say, oh, I know what you're talking about. I have the same thing. They can open up to me. I can tell them, oh, this is what helped me. Here's some support groups. Don't try to do this on your own. You know, it's really important to network with people, to get educated, continue being educated, become an advocate for yourself and for your family members and for other people. And when you see or hear somebody saying something that's not true, take the time to tell them and educate them and make the changes that are needed. I've been in situations with my family members. I know we talked about criminal justice, and we know the jails and the prisons have become our mental health hospitals over the last 50 years. And my sister even started getting arrested when she was in her 50s for the very same thing she always got hospitalized for. Because when she has her psychosis, she works with the police. She sees and hears things and calls the police. She always got hospitalized for 30 some years, but after 9/11, for some reason, she started getting arrested and she didn't even know why. So, you know, I've learned to be an advocate. I've been going to courts. I've been in every court almost that you can imagine, knock on wood, except the federal court, you know, and the judges, the lawyers, things are changing. And they do understand that the jails and prisons are not the place for these people. They need care, they need hospitalizations. It's not an excuse to commit crime, but we can use this as a time for rehabilitation and helping people find their way. So I think my 10 minutes are just about up, but I will be available for questions at the end.
Yes, there will be questions at the end. Thank you, Kathy. Next, we'll hear from Sharon Roth.
Thanks, Kathy. I've known Kathy for many years, and
It's not. It's not.
Okay, many of you know that I have a son that is chronically, severely mentally ill. And this is why I got interested in NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And Jeff has been ill since he was 17, came on very suddenly and didn't know what to do, had no idea, you know, what was going on with him. Had no idea it could be a mental illness. We had none in the family. And since Jeff is adopted, we also didn't know anything about his other family. So we were at a total loss for a couple of years. And it was only after he was arrested that for a minor crime at the time, but that was the first time that we got a diagnosis. And this is the case with so many families. And that was why I became active and joined NAMI. And NAMI not only has our local affiliate, but it has a state organization and a California state organization and a national organization. So I have been very active in starting several programs, mainly because there was a shooting of a friend of ours whose son was mentally ill and was barricaded in his room. And the mother didn't know what to do. So the former president of NAMI at the time said, well, call the police because they do welfare checks. And the police did come out, but unfortunately, the young man who was quite large, very tall and big, came out with a pocket knife. And once a weapon is involved, the police have to take action. And they knew nothing about de-escalation of persons with mental illness at the time. And they shot this young man and killed him. And after that, families were afraid to call the police. And I was listening to a radio broadcast on KQED one day, and I heard a corporal from Memphis PD, the police department, talking about a program that he started in the Tennessee area. And it involved the police, but it also was a partner with NAMI. And as soon as I heard that, I listened to the entire broadcast and I thought, we've got to bring that program here. And I spoke to the NAMI board at the time and they agreed. And I knew a sergeant at San Jose PD that I had been on many committees with because I was active in San Jose at the time. And she had heard the same broadcast. And so NAMI agreed to pay for her hotel bill and her airfare if the chief would let her go to Tennessee to take this class. And we had a temporary chief at the time, and he said, I can't make a final decision, but it sounds good. I'll let her have the time off. So she went. She didn't really think it was going to do much good, but she ended up coming back at the end of the week with such good statistics about the decrease in injuries, not only to the people on the streets, but to the police themselves. And that's when the new chief, who had just come in and wanted to make a name for himself, said, get this program started immediately. So we had to form a huge committee with all kinds of law enforcement and criminal justice people, family members, and peers to write the curriculum and get this program started. So it started in San Jose PD. It was a 40-hour program, and it teaches the police de-escalation techniques, also self-care of themselves, and does not tell them that they can't consider police safety first, but different ways of dealing with people that have mental illness. And the one big thing that came out of it was that they were allowed more time. They could spend as much time as needed in order to try to de-escalate a situation so that they did not have to use force of any kind, and especially their guns. So it's been successful. And when I was on the board at NAMI, California, we went around the whole state and started this program. So we were able to get CIT started throughout the state of California. And now it's countrywide, of course. But we also were able to advocate for more mental health courts so that people with mental illness could hopefully be diverted instead of sent to jail and put in programs where they can be treated. So we have CIT, we have national CIT, but we also have California CIT Association right here in the state so that officers don't have to travel all over the country to continue their education. A lot of areas, I know San Mateo started what they call PERT, which is Psych Emergency Response Team. where an officer rides in a car with a mental health professional. And that's been very effective also, and really a good augmentation to CIT, because not all CITs are available 24/7. So we need to have various types of response available to the public. They were trying to start what they called a community response team in San Jose, or Santa Clara County, I should be saying now, that they eventually are starting it. It is called Trusted Response Urgent Support Team. And what it is it does not involve the police. So it would be someone like a paramedic and somebody with mental health knowledge, maybe a mental health professional, or somebody that has really a lot of information about resources in the area, plus a peer. And they would go out and they would respond when we get this new, Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't 988 supposed to be the response for that team and for suicide? So people don't have to call 911 and go through all those other referrals. When 988 becomes a number for people with mental health problems of any kind, there should be somebody there to try to help them on the phone. And if they can't, then they can send out whatever team would be appropriate. And hopefully it would just be the trust team before we have to deal with the police. There is also in this area a mobile crisis team, which is also with the police going out. And then if they would need somebody from mental health to follow through. So the police would have to make sure that the area is safe before the mental health professional could come in and evaluate the person. And I think the governor is trying to put through SB, Senate Bill 1338, which is care court. And I'm not totally familiar with exactly what it is, but I think it's going to be very similar to what Judge Manley does down in San Jose at the mental health court. Because I know there's mental health courts now that have been started in many, many areas. And what that is people with either drug problems or mental health problems us referred to the judge, and he has a team that generally follows them through, and they have to report to him that they are following the program that was prescribed or taking the medication that was prescribed. And then if everything works out for them, in about 18 months to 24 months, a lot of times they graduate from the program. And if they don't comply with the program, then they could either end up in the hospital or back in jail. So I have a feeling that that's what this is going to be similar to.
Thank you, Sharon.
Mhm.
Kathy Cordova, talk to us about Recovery Cafe.
Hello, everybody. I guess mine is on a little higher than others. Again, I'm Kathy Cordova, and I'm the Executive Director of Recovery Cafe San Jose. So we're located in downtown San Jose, right between City Hall and the Martin Luther King Library, if you're familiar with downtown San Jose. And we were first formed. So prior to us even getting formed, there were people in that neighborhood who were serving homeless individuals, and they had been doing that through housing in a church facility, a soup kitchen, and some other means. And what they realized was that these people who were experiencing homelessness had many other issues that continued the cycle there. So some of those people had mental health issues, some of them had substance abuse issues, and had experienced other kinds of trauma. And those volunteers at the time felt that until you were able to break that cycle, you would never get people back in a healthy environment. So they looked around and they saw a model that existed that had started in 2003 in Seattle, and that was called Recovery Cafe. So at that point, Recovery Cafe Seattle had been open about 8 years. It had been started by its co-founders, Killian No and Ruby Takushi, and they were a couple of women in a faith-based organization that felt like how to carry out their faith best was to do some sort of community action. So they started the Recovery Cafe. The Recovery Cafe model is that we are a healing community, and community is very important to the work we do. We are not treatment. We work with individuals who have experienced trauma, and there could be a variety of different kinds of trauma. So some of that may be the results of having been homeless, living on the streets. Some of that may have been early childhood experience trauma. Some of that might be substance abuse. It may have led to mental health issues. It may have been domestic violence, but anyone who has experienced trauma is eligible to come and be a member. Many of our members experience multiple of those things. They may have experienced homelessness. They may have mental health concerns and have picked up substances to self-medicate around that. And what we do is to provide an environment for them to heal. We tend to say that everybody is in recovery from something. And so very important to our model is that we appreciate each person as a person with inherent worth and dignity and worthy of love, regardless of their trauma or experiences. And we're trying to provide a safe, warm, drug-free environment. So we ask our members just a few requirements. All services are completely free to them. They need to come and go through an orientation so that they understand our guidelines and our model. They need to attend a weekly recovery circle, and I'll explain what that is in a minute. They need to give back to the community somehow. So each day we have a chore board so they can sign up to sweep the floor or help in the kitchen or stuff envelopes, something that they're giving back. They don't have to give back on a daily basis, but they are part of a contributing member of the community, much like a family. You know, can you unload the dishwasher, please? It's that kind of thing. And then finally, while they're in our space, they need to be drug and alcohol free. Our understanding is that not all of them are going to be able to maintain that for a long time. We have some people who have very long-term sobriety, but we have others that use between the times they come into the cafe. But everyone is treated with respect, and we meet people where they are at. And so, as I said, one of the key components is the recovery circle. The recovery circle is a group of usually around 10 individuals, like 6 to 12 individuals, who meet on a weekly basis with a facilitator and address whatever is going on in their lives. So it may be challenges staying sober. It may be issues around being unhoused or needing to find more stable housing. And then that group sort of becomes a family, if you will, that meets week after week. We have some people who've been in the same circle for 8 years. We opened in 2014, and so some people have been there from the beginning. Each week we have the orientation, 2 orientations, and so some people have only been there, for a couple of times, but they then become part of that recovery circle. In addition, we have something called School for Recovery. We realize that people need to sometimes find things in their lives that they can become passionate about or to busy themselves with. So we have again, the School for Recovery. So we do 5 quarters each year of 8 weeks of classes. Each time there's a particular class, it meets over 8 weeks, and if a member attends 5 of the 8 weeks, they get a certificate of completion. Many of these people haven't completed high school, although others, we have people with doctorates there as well. But for a lot of people, it's the first time that they've gotten any kind of a diploma or anything like that. So it becomes very meaningful for people to attend many of the classes. So like currently we have 11 different classes within the quarter. So it's everything from advanced life skills, where they might learn computer skills and how to balance a checkbook and time management and things like that, to Bollywood dancing or mindfulness or yoga, a variety of different topics to help gain employable skills and or personal skills to move forward. We also have specialized programs in the arts and things like that. So we do an open mic every other month so members can perform for each other. It's a truly beautiful time when you see people who have incredible talents like John and people who sing off key, and everybody claps, and that community that's built in supporting each other regardless of level of talent is really very special. We have other kinds of special programs. We bring in health clinics. Tomorrow's a annual health fair, so we'll have 15 health providers. I guess we're a year ago, we were funded along with NAMI for a peer workforce investment grant. So for a long time, our model has included the concept of raising peer leaders, raising member leaders. So giving people who may not have had a chance to have leadership opportunities to learn how to do that. So that might be in facilitating a group, or it might be in teaching a class themselves. So about a year ago, we received this grant to work with Kathy and work with NAMI using their peer mentoring program to train some of our members to become what we call peer connectors initially. So right now we have people who are gaining some employment. So they're working just a few hours a week, becoming connectors with other members, helping them one-on-one, because we don't provide one-on-one counseling. So that has been a very important part, is our peer connector program as well. We also have other programs bringing in performances. We just are receiving a grant from something called the Red Ladder Theater Company. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. It used to be part of San Jose Rep, and when San Jose Rep went away, they took that educational theater program and brought it into the jails and prisons. So they're going to be working with us developing a theater program for our members as well. So just a little bit more about the model itself. So they call our kind of model a recovery-oriented system of care. So it, again, meets people where they're at on the recovery continuum and engages people for a lifetime of managing their disease, looking at people very holistically. And as I said, looking at people with a real sense of dignity and love. As I mentioned, Killian No is the founder of the one in Seattle. And I love the story that Killian tells about when they first opened the Seattle Cafe and carpet layers came in. And you can imagine if you look to the carpet to the side there, and one strip had the floral pattern that way, and the other one was, installed crookedly. And the carpet installers said, well, you're serving these people on the streets. It doesn't really matter. And she said, rip it up. These people need to be in a place that's a place of dignity. If you walk into Recovery Cafe San Jose, people are often very surprised. I would say it's not a lot different than the kind of room that you're in right now, in that it feels upscale. It doesn't feel like you're on the streets. We received federal money through the city of San Jose to be able to restore what was a church hall into a cafe. You might wonder about why call it a cafe. So when they started it, again, in Seattle, Seattle has a coffee culture. So that was very much existing at the time. So one of the things that they wanted to offer is not just the social services, the meetings and recovery circles, but they wanted people to be able to relax and have a nice cup of coffee. So both at the Seattle one and at San Jose, and as Cindy said, we're the second in the of recovery cafes in the US. We have coffee bars. So each afternoon we have latte hour. So members and volunteers can have a free latte type drink, specialty coffee drink, again, free of charge, but it gives them a sense of a special treat in the afternoon. It also is a job training program for those who want to learn how to become a barista as well. So San Jose was the second cafe. There are now 49 cafes across the US and Canada. We were the only one in the state of California until 2 years ago. And now there are 6 in the Bay Area, none beyond the Bay Area at this point. But we've opening in in Gilroy, San Francisco, Santa Cruz, Hayward, Solano, and Vallejo. So quite a few around the Bay Area, but they look to San Jose for training and leadership as well. I think that I'm about time, but I'm willing to take questions.
Yes, thank you, Kathy. Let's give a round of applause to all 4. Yay. Okay. And what we'd like to do now are to field questions. So for either of the Kathys, for Sharon, for John, they're all very open. What do you want to know about mental health recovery, mental health at the terraces, anything?
Is the Recovery Cafe housing, or is it just for people to come during the day?
We are more of a day center. So we are open right now Monday through Friday, 10 to 4. So when a member comes in at 10 o'clock, we have continental breakfast out there that's self-serve. And then we have our recovery circles starting at 11:30. We have other kinds of programming through the day. At 12:30, we have a community lunch that is very gourmet in nature and prepared by our kitchen manager and our members. And then in the afternoon, there's more chance for classes, but it's.
Thank you.
Somebody else? Question?
I just wanted to explain that what recovery in a mental illness means that somebody recognizes the fact that they have a mental illness and that they're willing to seek help. And sometimes that's the first step. So recovery doesn't necessarily mean they're going to put on a suit and go to work 5 days a week, but just the fact that they're seeking help, that they're willing to take help and maybe go to a recovery cafe, maybe do volunteer job someplace, and hopefully get gainful employment sometimes. Persons with a mental illness often say, I want to earn money and I want to be able to give back. So, there are various stages of recovery and, it's just there.
Yeah, I think, Kathy, you want to say something?
I was just going to say quickly that people do want to tell their stories. I think each of us has that story to tell, whether or not we're someone identify as someone with mental illness or identify with someone as with lived experience. Everybody has a story to tell, and that's what people are really wanting to do, is get those stories out. One way that we do this, you'll see there's art. I brought in these watercolors. We work with this wonderful watercolor artist who sits down with our members, sketches them, captures their story, which is written around the picture, and then fills that in. And then we're able to put this out in different galleries in the community and so forth to help educate around mental illness as well.
Yeah, do take time to read these because they are quite beautiful.
There's a question.
Yes, Bob.
I just wondered if you are working with young people and the issues that I sense are, sometimes it's better to get these young people before they get into too big a problem, or and I know there's a lot of drug problem at this point, and they're being laced with fentanyl and all of this. And I just wondered if you have any program for youth.
Well, I can tell you that at NAMI, we have programs because we do support groups and we do education courses. So I told you about the family to family course. One that came out, I think around 2008, is called Basics. And it's for families who have children and caregivers. And it's a course for them to learn all about the various diagnoses, all the different resources, different types of parenting that work with kids that have issues, and also what their rights are and that they must advocate for their children. So I took that class. My son by then was around 27, I think. And I just was curious about it. And I realized that my son would have a childhood diagnosis, later on, because we sought help for him, when he was, I always said he was my challenging child. He started terrible twos and didn't stop. And, he had a lot of things going for him. Teachers would say his behavior didn't match his goals. They did a psych eval on him when he was 7, said he was introverted, get him into sports. He became a star baseball player. When he was 8, we went to a clinic because of some of the things that were happening. We were told to take parenting classes. My husband and I took the parenting classes. We facilitated them for 3 years. They told us to get counseling. There was problems with our relationship. The counseling helped to some degree, but the elephant in the room was substance use and mental illness. I never hid that my sister had a serious diagnosis, but I don't blame anyone. I think they just didn't know what they're learning now. And we do know that children start exhibiting signs and symptoms. So there's a lot of effort in California now with the schools. In our county, we have a program called REACH, when kids are starting to show early warning signs of psychosis, being out of touch with reality, and they have multifamily groups, and they can, get in there early and create, save it from becoming a full-blown, episode when you can own it as a child. So there's a lot of work that's being done, and we have this class. We also have a presentation for schools called Ending the Silence. And we go in, it's a 50-minute class oriented for high schools and middle school to learn the early warning signs. We don't get into any diagnosis. Also about suicide prevention, how to help your friend. If your friend is telling you they want to die, don't keep it a secret, get help. So there's a lot of efforts going on, and there's a lot of research that, this does start in childhood. And a lot of adults, when they are full blown into it 20 years later and they start getting into recovery and start recognizing we have a peer-to-peer recovery education course, just like we have for families. They learn about all of this stuff, because where do you get an education about mental illness? You're told take medication and get therapy and go live happily ever after, but it doesn't quite work like that. So again, this peer-driven model of education, support, people owning it, and learning how to manage symptoms, You know, there's a lot of psychiatrists now that they say, well, I know how to treat psychosis. I know how to treat depression. You know, getting rid of maybe some of the labels. We don't maybe need those because they're very complicated and people have, you know, sometimes several diagnoses. But to answer your question, yes, I think there is an effort and it's important. And, you know, they're learning a lot about this does start in childhood for kids.
Other questions? Yes, Margaret.
I was wondering if you saw many veterans with PTSD problems.
We get everybody at NAMI. You probably see.
We do too.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I did not bring those statistics in front of me, but I want to say it's about 15% of our members are veterans.
Right. In fact, there is a course that NAMI has, it's called Homefront, and it was developed for family members of people in the military, you know, veterans and military, that is just really focused on PTSD and traumatic brain injuries. And again, it's a in-depth course and they get lots of good resources. And I think one of the key things is meeting other people, meeting your peers, so you don't feel so alone and you realize that, you know, and we have lots of people telling their stories through our programs and presentations, and they share their hope of recovery and wellness. And, you know, that sometimes those are the people that can really touch your heart and say, wow, that person's been where I'm at and I can get better. So
There's specifically a program in San Francisco that's called Swords to Plowshares that's connected. I mean, it's a veteran services program, but they are connecting with Recovery Cafe up there to have the recovery circles and that model being put into that as well.
Also, the CIT in San Mateo, I'm not sure what they do in San Jose now because I moved away and came back. But San Mateo, they spend a day on veterans and the effects of being, you know, in a war. And Swords to Plowshares also comes in and talks. And then one of the psychologists from Palo Alto University presents. So, you know, it's very meaningful.
Yes, Marion.
Is there a program to train people in order to help other people? And are there scholarships or necessary giving of scholarships in order to get people to go into these fields?
The Mental Health Services Act does supply some funds to train people to go into mental health. And I don't know what the budget is this year because they're doing the budget now for that. Mental Health Services Act is the money that comes in for people that earn over $1 million a year. It's a 1% tax. And that's how they get a lot of the mental health programs funded. We have lost the tax that used to be, I think, for car registration and gas. Correct me if I'm wrong. But that's how they get some of the funding.
But the issue is, even if funding is available, there is a huge shortage of mental health workers.
Right, there is.
So if you look at the big mental health providers in the county, Momentum County Department of Behavioral Health and others, they can't hire fast enough. There just is vacant positions.
Right.
There's something that's called Project Pipeline, where they are specifically reaching out to people who may have had lived experience or people who are coming from the community colleges in specialized programs. For instance, there's a substance abuse training program at San Jose City College and Evergreen College and so forth, looking to try to recruit those people into the pipeline of working in the field, but there just aren't enough people going into the field.
Yeah, and we're also encouraging them at meetings to bring in, like Kathy said, more peers, because we believe they should be everywhere and beyond the teams to do the outreach and, make those initial contacts. And I also think that, our county, they tend to hire people who have licenses to run programs. And, I see a lot of people who could be doing more of the work, and they should be hiring more paraprofessionals to do administrative type things and management things and have teams. But they've got some kind of a mindset that they have to have a licensed therapist running this and that. And they definitely need to be on the teams, obviously, and supervise things. But I think that is another way that we can guide them to think about how they can change their model of how they're working with people.
So I just want to say a couple of things before John closes us out with a song. So we end faithful to our 4:30 time. The first thing is, I think when we talk about mental health, we want to be very aware of those people who are on the streets, who are very vulnerable. But I also think we have to keep in mind that we all are on a mental health continuum. All of us. There's no one that has perfect mental health or absolutely unredeemable mental health. And that where we are on that moves. And so we have to begin to talk about this, that situationally things can happen to us to make us sick, in the same way that things can happen to make us physically unwell. And for me, I had, oh my goodness, I had experienced secondhand trauma and then became unwell. I got treatment, I got better, but we have to be aware of this for all of us. Every human being, we want to talk about physical health, but we also want to talk about mental health. And I count it as one of the greatest blessings in my life that I did get sick now, because I am so much more aware and I'm so much more connected and less likely to talk about them and us, but to talk about we. We all need to be aware of mental health and how to support each other. So John, sing us a song. I'm sorry? Yes, we do have materials that Kathy brought from NAMI and Kathy brought from Recovery Cafe. They're going to stay around afterwards. They'd love to talk to you individually as well.
Yeah, thanks to these ladies and people like them. I have 14 years of clean and sober. Hours in the library, reading till I'm blind. I thought and thought and thought till I almost lost my mind. Asking why do I do it? Why do I fall in love? Read the daily paper, all I found was news. Does no one have the answer to the all-star lovesick blues? Tell me why do I do it? Why do I fall in love? Wrote myself a letter trying to explain why I value sorrow, what makes me covet pain. Tell myself the answer. Why do I fall in love? Went up on a mountain, went out on the sea. I looked into a mirror, all I saw was me, asking why. Why do I do it? Why do I fall in love? Talked to Jimmy Swaggart, called Einstein on the phone. Asked around the pool hall, but they only sent me home, asking why. Why do I do it? Why do I fall in love?
Thank you all. And please avail yourselves of these people who are here and ask any questions to them individually.